your host today for one of many live streams that are going to be happening in the next few months. And I am super excited to get things started with our special guest today. However, I do want to start things off by saying or recognizing that today is Women's Equality Day. This day in 1920, the US government ratified the 19th Amendment, which expanded voting rights to women. And we have come a long way since then, but we still have a ways to go. Speaking of coming a long way, today's guest has seen the music industry come a long way since she began her career in the 1970s. In her new book, Under My Skin, she shares her stories of life in the rock and roll fast lane, such as touring Japan with the band Kiss, which I'm sure a lot of us older folks remember. Her journey revealed a gaping hole she was trying to fill in a world of sex, money, and fame. Elise Krentzel, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Thea. It's great to be here. Hi, everybody.
And it's great to have you here. I just want to jump right in because we have limited time and there's so much to discuss.
Okay, go, go, go.
Go, go, go. One of the first things that I wanted to ask you was what inspired you to write a memoir that not only reveals your rock and roll escapades, but also about your desire to be loved and heard.
Thanks for asking that question. Well, if anybody has seen the film Almost Famous or read the book, I would like to say that I was almost famous. And the reason why it took me what I considered a long time to write this book was because I needed to heal those broken parts inside of me, all the parts that had been seeking external fame or to be involved in an industry that was so glitzy and glamoury, and to come back to myself as to what was true, what was real, and who I could forgive, including myself. So that took a couple of decades. So during the initial COVID period in 2020, I said, okay, this is it. Here's your chance. And essentially, my New Year's revolution, it was a resolution on January 1st, was okay, write the book. And that's it. I wrote it from January 3rd, sat down, punched it out 8 months later.
Wow, that's that's really incredible timing. Now, I know that a lot of your book, and I'll hold it up here for everybody to see the cover, Under My Skin. Actually, just looking at it today, I was really enthralled with the style of writing. So kudos to you, for 8 months. But also a lot of what you talk about in the book is your tour with Kiss in Japan that happened in the 70s. Was it 77?
Yes.
In 1977. And it's a big part of your story. But the funny thing is that people are going to find out is you didn't even like the band. And when you were first called to go on tour as a rock journalist with them, you turned the manager down. What changed your mind?
Okay, so this is a spoiler alert, but what happened was that, yeah, I didn't like the band, and I was adamant about being able to write my opinion. If the manager agreed that I could write my opinion, and he was convinced that opinion would change, he said, yes, you can come on the tour. What really happened, though, within 3 weeks was that I was strolling down Broadway. I'm from New York City. You probably hear that in the accent. I'm strolling down Broadway, and I come across a marquee for a play called Pacific Overtures. I was curious about it. I went to read what it was about, and it was about Japan and Japan's rise in American society from Sony pre-Walkman, but from Sony, Panasonic, all the electronics, Toyota Motors, and the culture of Japan. So I bought myself a ticket and went to see that Broadway show, loved it. And then a week after that, I had an interview with Paul Simon. And his publicist said, okay, you'll be meeting at this restaurant, XYZ, a Japanese restaurant. So I took that as a good omen. I learned how to use the chopsticks really, really quickly. And so the convergence of those two episodes gave me the impetus to at least give it a go and say yes to the manager of Kiss with that condition. that I could write what I wanted.
Now, so you get on tour and you're with the guys and you're seeing the craze that goes along with the Kiss Army. Did you eventually change your perspective and your thoughts about the music or the band?
Okay. I changed my perspective about the band because basically, aside from Gene, they're really down-to-earth guys. What the original four. They were basically down-to-earth guys. They were from New York. They were from, so yeah, really down-to-earth. So that was one thing. Secondarily, the screaming fans, 5,000 fans or more, met us at the airport. There was another Kiss Army, and they were all girls, which was really surprising. In Japan, they likened Kiss to kabuki theater.
Oh.
And Gene wasn't number one in Japan. Peter Criss was, because he was the cat. Cats are loved in Japan.
Oh, yeah. Okay, that makes sense. Right.
Right. Okay, and then, as you know, whether you're going to any kind of concert, and you back in the day, you'd hold up your light. Now you hold up your camera, right? To hi, we are the world. You hold up the camera. But that feeling of oneness when you're listening to a band, when you're singing the lyrics out loud, that oneness really drove me over the top to say, oh my God, well, I may not love this music, but everybody else does. And that swayed me.
You know, I say it all the time. Music is the great uniter.
It is.
It brings us all together, and you become a part of that feeling, and it's just overwhelming. And then, you know, I've had many times when I've said, oh, I'm not really a fan of that band, and then I go see the live performance and it completely changes my perspective.
And to that statement, Thea, what's important to know is that, I guess, as a female journalist, especially back in those days, first of all, I was the youngest. I was 19 years old. Mm-hmm. There was one other female journalist on this tour of 10 journalists, and she, I think, was in her late 30s. Any case, so we were like two bookends. For me, not just being critical musically, and I have a little bit of a background. I played classical guitar from when I was 6 years old. So besides being critical of the band and being a journalist to report on everything that was happening, I did allow myself to become emotionally moved, especially by the fans.
I like that, especially for someone who is saying she felt unheard or unloved. That fills part of that emptiness.
It does.
Mm-hmm. It does. Now, you had mentioned Gene earlier when you were talking about how down to earth the guys were. Actually, one of the stories that you count, and there are many, was that a fellow journalist who was on tour with you, Brian, had actually started spreading a baseless rumor that you were a groupie of Gene Simmons, and that shocking. I'm sure you were so surprised to hear all of this. How did you react, and what do you think his motivation was for starting such a rumor?
Okay, number one, yeah, shocked. I was actually emotionally devastated. I felt horrible because it wasn't true. And he didn't just spread the rumor amongst the other journalists. He wrote it in his article back to his newspaper that there's this.
That's unbelievable.
I mean, it was horrible, but I had one friend on the tour, one male friend, on the tour, and he broke the news to me, and he, helped me, like, keep up the good work, and you're a great person, and he gave me confidence. But what happened was that I got back at this guy.
Oh, okay. Do you mind sharing?
Well,
or do we have to read the book?
You have to read the book, but I did something pretty friggin' outrageous. It took a lot of guts. It took a lot of balls, or as we say in New York, chutzpah, which means
chutzpah. See, I always said chutzpah. It's chutzpah. It's chutzpah.
Chutzpah. like you're spitting it out.
See, everybody, I learn something every time I talk to guests like Elise. All right,
Like,
I gotta work on my Yiddish.
oh,
Wow.
funny.
Okay. Well, see, ladies. Now, for me, it's almost like, well, you had how many male journalists did you have on the tour?
So 8.
And then there were 2 women.
Yes.
So, do you feel like he thought, oh, this is easy pickings?
I think this. Honestly, he was jealous and felt entitled. He had a superiority complex. First of all, these were journalists from the New York Times, New York Magazine, the Detroit Free Press. I don't know if it's still in business, LA Times, Playboy Magazine, etc., etc. Here comes Elise Krentzel, not so famous journalist. I wrote for Record Week in Canada, a trade publication, and Music Express in the UK, because my strategy was to become the New York correspondent. Because who am I? I'm a freelancer. How am I going to up my game? That's how I up my game.
And by the way, that was so smart because when you think about it, the really established magazines like Rolling Stone and was Spin around then? I think Spin was around then, but they had their staff. It was really hard to break into
Yes,
that small circle. So what a
yes.
great strategy. And I tell people all the time, the best thing to do if you don't know where to start, make your own opportunity.
Well, that's exactly it. So I made my own opportunity thinking, how can I do this? How can I get there? And so let's rewind. What was the question?
Oh, the
The motivation.
motivation behind the
Right.
journalist.
Right. So his motivation was simply, well, who is she? Who does she
Mhm.
think she is? And needless to say, if you look at my cover, that's me, folks. That's
Yeah.
me. This is me at 17. I was a hot number. And
Go
they were
girl.
jealous. They were jealous. Probably wanted to get into my pants. I certainly know one of them did. Maybe this guy did too, but I would never look at that twerp.
Well, nowadays, if something like that happened, I mean, I know you had your way of dealing with it, and again, everybody read the book if you want to find out how Elise responded to all this. But nowadays, that is a super case for slander and
Exactly.
libel if he printed
A
it.
libel, exactly, because it was in print. I
Yep,
know, I know.
that's huge. That's huge. So, just out of curiosity, did Gene hear about it, and what was his response?
I don't know if they heard about it, but I will tell you this, that something that triggered this guy to write this was because I had set up over a period of 2 or 3 days interviews with each individual band member at the hotel that we were at in Tokyo. So I waited towards the end of the tour
Mm-hmm.
for the big hurrah to do the interviews because I had some background information prior to
Mm-hmm.
that. And I was in Gene's room for the interview. I was in Peter's room, I was in Paul's room, and Ace's room. So when he heard that, oh, she's going to Gene's room, that's the trigger for him.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, Gene was showing me Polaroid photos of all the women he had gone to bed with. And I'm like, I don't give a shit. Get
He
this
was
away from
proud.
me. Are you trying to impress me?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Okay, so folks, again, this is Elise Krentzel, the author of Under My Skin, and she's imparting some interesting stories from her life in the rock and roll fast lane that started in the 1970s, and we're coming off of talking a little bit about some of the craziness that happens with her journey to Japan as a rock journalist with the band Kiss. One of the things also that I'd like to ask you a little bit about is when you were putting this together, because I know in memoirs, speaking of libel, you open yourself up to risk. What type of due diligence do you have to do as an author to, cover your bases in that regard?
Okay, so there is a misperception about this. If you are writing your own memoir, you are not liable because it is your opinion,
Your memory, your
your
opinion.
memory, your imagination.
Mm-hmm.
No one can prove if it was fact or fiction.
Mm-hmm.
Then, for example, on the back cover, we have a photograph by Bob Gruen of me with Kiss.
Yep.
So I called up Bob. Bob is a very famous rock journalist. He did the John Lennon NYC, John Lennon in the T-shirt NYC, and he's as famous as Annie Leibovitz. Anyway, I called up Bob. I said, "Can I use this photo?" He said, "You own the photo." Every person that I took on tour a photo of, they were granted the rights. He goes, "So you don't even need my permission." Okay,
Wow.
great. And then the article that I republished in my book, which was the Kiss Diary article for Record Week, that is, Record Week is no longer in business. If a magazine or journal, online or otherwise, is still operational, you have to check who owns the copyright. Either the magazine does, or the publication, or you do. Well, in this case, time has passed. I own the copyright.
Mm-hmm.
And lastly, I changed the names of the journalists on tour to protect the guilty.
To protect the guilty. I love it. Well, obviously, especially in the 70s, sex, drugs, rock and roll, I'm sure that permeated not just through the band, but also through the entourage that went with the band.
Society.
Oh, yeah. I mean, and Japan, I know that there's one chapter I think people need to read. And again, here's the cover of the book, Under My Skin. But there's one chapter that people need to read about the Yakuza, who are the equivalent of the mafia, the Japanese mafia. And you had a little run-in with them too. And I'm not going to give that away, but I won't give that one away. That one people just have to read on their own. But certainly, I mean, things were pretty crazy then. And I have to say, as being a woman traveling with this huge entourage, mostly made up of men.
Oh, yeah.
What do you remember being kind of the biggest challenge?
Well, the biggest challenge was with the other journalists. Mm-hmm. Just basically mind my own business and take my interviews and meet people on my own time. That was number one. Now, being in Japan at 19 years old, having this position of authority and respect, I was being fawned over by the people in the Japanese music industry from the top on down. Mm-hmm. So when we would go to dinners with record company executives, publishing executives, radio, TV, other media, I had a swarm of men who wanted to sit next to me. Mm. So I enjoyed all the attention.
Yeah, the American Girl is in Japan with
blue eyes.
And a big rock and roll band. I mean, that was the pinnacle right there, huh?
I mean, imagine that in 1970s Japan, they were just opening to the West. Foreigners were a rare thing to see. Mm-hmm. When I went on the subway, little girls and boys were like, "Ooh." They're laughing because they had never seen a foreigner. A woman came up to me in a public bathroom and to touch my hair like, "Are you real?"
Oh my gosh.
This actually happened.
Isn't that incredible?
Yeah.
Well, okay, so you fast forward to today.
Okay.
And your journey, you obviously you didn't stay on the road touring with bands, but how did your experience from all of that evolve with your career? So what were your next big steps in your career?
Well, I like to tell people that my career is a zigzag. It was never a straight line. However, there was some sort of internal logic to it, if you will. After that, I stayed in Japan for 5 years. So I came back to New York City when I was 24 years old. And I had a 5-year experience of working for the largest music publisher and producer, publisher of magazines in Japan, working with Japanese bands. Then I started my own talent and booking agency in Japan. Again, the first foreigner to do this and a female. And I introduced punk rock.
Oh, how'd you do that?
I understood the music publishing industry and their position, which is completely different than now. Back in the day, music publishers were responsible to promote their catalog. And the catalog would then be sold to the record company. In other words, to create an album.
Right.
So it was up to the publisher to do the promotion. So I came up with the media promotional ideas, sold it to the record company, but I took the risk of purchasing the catalog rights.
Gotcha.
So I purchased the rights to Stiff Records, it was one of the first British punk rock labels. And their motto was, and I don't know, can I say words here?
Sure.
Okay, but if it ain't stiff, it ain't worth a fuck. That was their motto.
Wow. Yeah, that's punk rock.
Like,
all right.
I like that motto. Okay, let's sign that catalog.
So when you say sign, that means that you got the rights to distribute in Japan.
I got the territorial rights.
Got it.
And then the work began. And so just a quick story. When I introduced Elvis Costello and the Attractions, My Aim Is True, the first hit single in Japan, nobody knew the band. So what I did was I had them play on the Ginza, which is like Fifth Avenue. It's like the Rodeo Drive of Tokyo, on a flatbed truck.
Oh, yeah.
They were dressed in schoolboy uniforms, and they were purposely arrested. We had it all set up with the police. They were arrested for loud noise. This got such enormous media coverage. The concert sold out for 3 days.
I love it, Elise. I don't know. Could you get away with that in the United States? Set up the police to do that kind of thing?
Maybe back in those days. Yeah, I don't know.
Not today.
Okay. So then
they got too much more to handle.
Oh yeah. So then I came back to the United States because I was working with Benihana restaurants, and for the next 5 years, I introduced big brand names to the United States: Wacol Lingerie, Kirin Beer, Shiseido Cosmetics, Tokyo Soir, which is a wedding apparel, blah, blah. The last of the hurrahs in New York was discovering in 1989 multimedia.
Mm-hmm.
And from there, I met this multimedia creator, artist person who I then fell in love with. And then I moved to Switzerland because of him. His last name was Bop. I am not kidding you. Bop, like
Elise Bop.
And he was a jazz musician.
On top of, he was born to be a jazz musician.
And composer and concert promoter. It was just crazy. I'm
That's funny.
Well, wait a minute. If we have children, well, should we name her B?
Yeah. Bebop. So, but that's interesting that you mentioned this, your skill set that you got in the music industry could be applied anywhere. I mean, a lot of those brands had nothing to do with music really, or it was peripheral, like Wacol, and but you could still apply all of that. So in speaking to our audience, because I know we have a lot of women of all ages who may be considering or are just starting a career in the music industry, what type of advice would you give to them?
Okay. In today's day and age, you've got the power. So you have to understand that. You have the power. What does that mean? What are you going to do with that power? Well, it depends whatever you want to do in this industry. Know this. If men treat you wrongly, speak up. That's number one. Do not hold it in. Do not think it's your fault. Do not suffer internally. Speak up. Say it loud. Number two, it doesn't matter, and this is probably applicable to any industry. It doesn't matter what the naysayers say. You've got to do what your heart is telling you to do. I would say, being the unconventional outcast that I was, and I would never follow a straight line. If there are rules to, there are all these articles online on, how to spend how to spend your 40 hours in a week, how to build more business, how to get more leads. And I'm like, screw that. No, do it organically.
Yeah.
I did
What
it.
feels right for you?
Well, whatever's right for you. If you are someone that wants to plan everything out, go ahead. But like John Lennon said, life happens when you're busy making other plans. So be flexible and never give up. Now, how do you do that? That's easier said than done, right? Right. This is how you do it. You have to visualize in your mind the future that you wish to embrace. You have to see it visually in your mind. See yourself in that position in whatever, 5 years, 10 years. So first visualize it. Then write a list. In 10 years, I will, not I want, I will. I will have achieved. So it's already a done deal. I will have achieved, fill in the blank. But keep seeing it in your mind. What do you think athletes do? How do professional athletes win a gold medal? They see their win at the end of the track or at the end of that sport. You need to do that too. And again, when you doubt, when you're feeling down, when you have insecurities, remember your vision. Just picture it because it'll make you smile. It'll make you happy knowing that you're going to achieve that.
I love this. This is good advice, everybody. And again, it's not just for women in music, but it's for anybody in wanting to achieve their goals. And especially if you're in a creative or unconventional role, like you said, the how-tos don't necessarily apply.
Right. One more thing. If you're a musician, though, very specific advice is that touring these days, you may not be earning a living from touring. So think of your career as one song wonders. If you can get one song to go viral, streaming, do that.
Do that.
Do that. Write that one song, and then the rest will follow.
And that segues into what Horizon Music is doing, which is we're launching a new all-female musician DJ marketplace so that there are opportunities to supplement your income when we know that a lot of venues have closed down. We know that touring is spotty because tours get canceled and people get sick and so on and so forth. And a lot of women have little ones. A lot of women have people to take care of or day jobs, and touring is very difficult for them. So we're hoping that women will take advantage of this as an opportunity to sign up. If you go to horizonmusic.org and go to Random Max Music, you can see where you can sign up and create a profile, and we'll help do the marketing and promoting of your services for you.
Right.
Because as we know, on Women's Equality Day, unfortunately in the music industry, women do not get equal opportunity. There is gender bias and bookings and airplay and all kinds of stuff. So on that note, I thank you for taking the time to share your story and give advice based on your experience, because role modeling is how we learn without having to trip up so hard ourselves. And also it allows us to appreciate those who came before us and kind of, blazed the trail. And so we thank you for doing that. Elise, thank you for being here today. And everyone who is watching, again, Elise is the author of Under My Skin, Drama, Trauma, and Rock and Roll. You can find it on Amazon.com. On the scroll underneath, you will see that we have a short URL that goes to smile.amazon.com and straight to Elise's book. If you use that and assign Horizon Music as your preferred charity, a portion of your purchase will go back to Horizon Music Foundation, which helps support programming like this. So, Elise, thank you so much for joining our little band of dreamers, rule breakers, and rock stars.
Thank you so much, Thea. It was wonderful to be here and to share some stories.
Well, we look forward to talking with you again soon. And everybody, I hope you have a great day. Rock and roll, it's a wrap.
It's a wrap.
It's a wrap.